In 1997, Apple was just weeks away from bankruptcy. Steve Jobs was gone. Microsoft ruled the world. But what if Apple had died right there, before the iPhone ever existed? Imagine a world without Apple. No iPhone in your pocket, no MacBooks in coffee shops, no AirPods dangling from every ear in sight. A world where Silicon Valley never learned that design could be as powerful as technology. Where innovation wasn't cool, just corporate. It sounds impossible today, but in the mid-1990s, Apple was days away from bankruptcy. Its products weren't selling, its vision was gone, and Wall Street had already written its obituary. So what if Apple had gone bankrupt in the 90s? What if the company that changed how we live, work, and think had simply vanished? This is the story of the death that never happened, and the world that would have looked very different because of it. In 1996, Apple was a disaster. The company that had once introduced the Macintosh, the computer that made technology personal, was collapsing under its own weight. Its product line was bloated, its marketing was confused, and innovation had dried up. Apple was losing nearly $1 billion a year. Its computers were outdated, expensive, and incompatible with the growing world of Windows. Microsoft, IBM, and Dell were eating its market share alive. The once revolutionary company had become irrelevant, a fading brand from the 1980s. In desperation, Apple went shopping for salvation. They tried to buy software companies. They explored licensing deals. Nothing worked. And then, almost as a last resort, they made one final move. They bought a small, failing computer company called Next. Along with that company came a man they had fired 11 years earlier, Steve Jobs. At the time, nobody cared. The tech world had moved on. Jobs was seen as a stubborn perfectionist who had burned out in his own ego. But that quiet deal in 1997, worth just $429 million, would go on to rewrite history. Because when Steve Jobs walked back into Apple's headquarters in Cupertino, the company was weeks away from bankruptcy. If the next deal had collapsed, Apple wouldn't have made it to the end of the year. Now imagine that timeline. The deal falls through. Steve Jobs never returns. Apple files for bankruptcy in 1997. The Apple logo fades from store shelves. Its assets are sold off in pieces. Microsoft might buy the patent library. Sony might grab the design team, and that's it. Apple becomes another footnote in Silicon Valley history. Without Apple, the story of technology looks very different. There's no iMac to bring color and emotion back into computers. No iPod to make music digital and personal again. No iPhone to define an entire generation. Let's rewind. In the early 2000s, when Apple was reborn, it didn't just create products, it created identity. It taught the world that design, simplicity, and emotion could sell technology. It turned gadgets into status symbols, and it made people feel something about tech. But without that rebirth, that never happens. Instead, the 2000s became the decade of beige. Computers remain cold, boxy, and purely functional. The PC wars end with Microsoft dominating everything. Windows XP becomes the default universe, and stays that way far longer than it should. The creative industries, music, film, and design lose their muse. Apple didn't just make hardware, it gave artists tools that felt human. Without that, the digital art boom, the music revolution, and even YouTube's early creator culture all look different. Because iMovie never existed, GarageBand never inspires a new wave of bedroom producers, the iTunes Store never changes how we buy music, and the phrase, "there's an app for that," was never born. But the real shockwave comes from the smartphone. In 2007, the iPhone changed everything. It killed the keyboard phone. It made the internet mobile. It created an entirely new economy. Without it, what happens? Maybe BlackBerry keeps its dominance. Maybe Nokia never falls. Google's Android might still exist, but it's clunky, inconsistent, and never finds a clear vision. Because the truth is, Android became great only because it was competing with Apple. Without that competition, smartphones remain business tools, not personal devices. The app economy never explodes. Instagram, TikTok, Uber, none of them emerge in the same way. There's no app store, no culture of constant updates, no trillion-dollar ecosystem built around mobile innovation. Think about that for a second. Without Apple, we don't just lose one company. We lose an entire digital culture. billions of people's daily lives would look different. The way we communicate, work, travel, and even fall in love, all shaped by a single company that almost didn't survive. But let's go even deeper. Without Apple, Silicon Valley itself changes. The idea that design matters, gone. The belief that technology can be personal, gone. The culture of bold risk-taking, maybe never born. Apple taught investors that beauty and engineering could coexist. It inspired companies like Tesla, Airbnb, and even SpaceX to think differently, to mix storytelling with science. Without that, the tech world becomes colder, more corporate. Innovation slows down. Products are built for function, not feeling. Even advertising and branding take a hit. Apple's Think Different campaign, one of the most iconic of all time, inspired a generation of creators, dreamers, and entrepreneurs. Without it, the startup world becomes less romantic, less idealistic, more about spreadsheets, less about vision. Now let's talk about Steve Jobs himself. Without Apple's comeback, his story ends as a tragedy, not a legend. He remains the man who started strong and burned out early. Pixar might still succeed, but Jobs never returns to the spotlight. There's no iPhone keynote, no black turtleneck on stage, no one more thing. He never becomes the symbol of creative rebellion that inspired millions. And maybe we don't get Tim Cook either, because there's no company to lead after Jobs. Without Apple, the entire leadership lineage of modern tech disappears. Companies like Google and Microsoft don't get the competitive pressure to stay visionary. Innovation loses its emotional edge. And the consumer becomes secondary again, just another number in a corporate system. But Apple's absence doesn't just reshape tech, it changes culture. Without the iPhone, the smartphone revolution happens slower and differently. Social media remains mostly web-based, like MySpace and early Facebook. People don't carry the internet in their pocket. There's no Instagram influencer culture, no mobile video explosion, no TikTok-driven generation. Music streaming might not exist in the same way. Spotify and Apple Music shaped each other through competition. Without Apple, the iPod never normalizes paying for digital music, and piracy dominates well into the 2010s. Even filmmaking and photography evolve differently. No iPhone cameras pushing innovation, no pocket-sized devices capturing revolutions, protests, and history in real time. The world feels less connected, slower to react, slower to change. And then, the final layer, the economy. Apple isn't just a company, it's one of the largest economic engines on Earth. Without it, millions of jobs across hardware, software, accessories, and logistics never exist. The app economy alone, worth over $500 billion today, disappears, and entire industries that depend on Apple's ecosystem, from chip manufacturers to content creators, never rise. Without Apple, the stock market looks different. The S&P 500 loses one of its biggest drivers. Wall Street misses out on one of the greatest corporate comebacks in history. And the wealth created by Apple's rise, the trillion-dollar company that inspired a generation of investors, simply never happens. Now, come back to reality. Apple didn't go bankrupt in the 90s. Steve Jobs came back. He simplified everything. He cut the clutter, focused the vision, and built a company on one belief: that technology, when designed beautifully, could make people feel human. The iMac brought joy back to computing. The iPod made music personal again. The iPhone redefined communication, and the iPad reshaped education and creativity. One company didn't just survive, it reimagined the future. Today, Apple is one of the most valuable companies in history. Its logo isn't just a brand, it's a symbol of possibility, of what happens when failure meets vision, of how one near-death experience in the 90s changed the entire direction of humanity's relationship with technology. So, what if Apple had gone bankrupt in the 90s? We'd have lost more than just a company. We'd have lost the soul of modern innovation, the belief that creativity and technology can belong together, and maybe the spark that keeps us dreaming. I'm Arthur Black, and this is The Gentleman Files, where we ask not just what happened, but what if it hadn't?